John Kenny,
Mm.
interpersonal relationship coach. What does it mean?
Well, actually, that's the approach to my coaching. So I'm actually a transformational relationship coach, but my approach to coaching is interpersonal relationship coaching. And it is a fusion of coaching, counselling, hypnotherapy, and neuro-linguistic programming from all of my training and experience. I've congealed it into kind of one approach.
And what kind of spectrum of people are we talking? Is there an age limit? Is there an age lower limit? Is it from all people from all walks of life that come looking for assistance from you?
Yeah, so my kind of expertise is in the kind of personal relationship field. So it's people that generally are struggling with unhealthy, toxic type relationships, so they want to be more confident being able to manage those better. And so that can range from anybody from, so my youngest client is has been recently 17 years old, all the way up to the oldest client I've had has been in their 70s. So it's just depending on where people are in their life when they realise they actually need some assistance in order to sort of break the patterns of where they are.
What kind of assistance? Can you put it into practical terms for me?
Yeah, so my approach basically looks at your patterns. So it's very much about how you learn to see life as a kid. So we learn most of our sort of coping strategies, the way that we relate to people, how we see ourselves is formed on the whole in the early years of our life, sort of up to 7 or 8 years of age. And those patterns we can carry through most of our life if we're unaware that we're carrying them. And if they're maladaptive or unhealthy, then we'll keep having those kind of unhealthy and maladaptive kind of situations that we find ourselves in because we keep following the same thoughts and emotional processes that we would have experienced when we were kids, and we think that's normal. So we go around thinking that we should do things a certain way, we have to do things a certain way, this is what is expected of us, this is just normal, and we go around doing that all the time. And it's about addressing that if it's not working. And obviously the people that generally come to me are people that recognize that that's no longer working. They keep finding themselves in situations that they don't really want to be in, but they don't really know how to break that cycle and pattern.
Is it a case then of sort of like reprogramming the brain, if you like?
So it's understanding yourself first, and then it's looking at reprogramming your sort of beliefs, your relational patterns. So if you're, say for instance, you might be a avoidant attachment type. So there's a theory in psychodynamic therapy called attachment theory. And you might have an insecure attachment. So you could have an avoidant attachment, which means when you get close to someone, your defense mechanisms kick in. You're not used to being close to people as a kid when you were growing up. So therefore you don't know how to be close to people as an adult. So therefore all the coping strategies that you put in place as a child to keep yourself emotionally safe, you'll put them back into place, and you'll start to avoid being close to someone again, and you'll back off. Now, if you can understand why you do that, and that actually that you do that, then we can look at what do you want to do? How do you want to be in a relationship? Do you want a deeper sense of connection? Do you want to stop running away from people? And that's just an example of some of the stuff that I would work with. But that's also kind of can bleed out into lots of other areas of your life. So if you are avoidant in, say, for instance, you don't believe in yourself, therefore you'll get to a certain stage in your life where you might be quite successful, and then your belief systems will kick in and you'll start to self-sabotage. So you might then throw something away that you could have had because you don't know how to have it, or your belief is that you're not allowed to have it, you don't deserve it, you're not worthy of it. And it's about understanding that kind of concept of self, so therefore you can make healthier choices and more positive choices for yourself.
So we're not talking just personal relationships, we're talking, say, work relationships, we're talking about attitudes to progression, perhaps in the workplace. So it's pretty much across the board then.
Yeah, if you can manage your relationship with yourself and understand how you tick and how you work, that will influence every area of your life. My focus is generally with the relationships that people want, because that's where my background is, and that's where, although I did put a bit when I wrote my book, obviously I put a bit about my own athletics career. So when I was an athlete back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, I could have been a much better athlete if I didn't self-sabotage. But because I didn't believe in myself, every time I started to run really well, I would then do something which made sure that I would then get an injury, or I'd start going clubbing, or I'd start dating, or whatever it was. It would take my focus away from the athletics, so therefore I wouldn't be as good as I could have been. And therefore I did that in relationships. Every time I had a relationship, I had a certain relational pattern. So therefore I would keep choosing the same types of relationships to get me back into the same space, which is the one I knew. So they would always end in a bit of a mess most of the time, to be honest. So that's all. Go on.
It fascinates me just to just dwell on the sporting aspect. One, because I work in sport, or I have done all my life, and my various children, including one at the moment, is trying to be a professional sportsman. And he has a sports psychologist, and I've been very impressed with him in terms of, and I've known him for a while. He worked with my big son as well. Makes things very simple. When you say you sabotage yourself, is that because of, from your background or your upbringing? Is that essentially a lack of confidence, or what could somebody like you now have helped with you then? How would you have addressed the situation?
Yeah, so if I was to work with me now, last few years, which is to really delve into my self-belief. My core belief was I was never going to amount to anything. So every time in that sort of side of the field where I thought, oh, I'm doing really well, where I could be proud of myself and pleased with myself, my belief system would kick in and say, yeah, but you're never going to amount to anything. So then as an athlete, going back now, I would definitely work on that kind of mental side of things and start to work on my core belief, and then instill new beliefs so that I would actually go into races believing that I deserved to do well and that I was going to do well, rather than this fear of it wasn't a fear of failure, it was a fear of success, because I wasn't allowing success for myself. So that's where I really struggled, and that's where I'd work on my mindset. Obviously, knowing what I know about nutrition and exercise and stretching and physio and massage and everything nowadays, I'd be a much better athlete as well, because I'd have put all that into place too. My kind of physio was only a visit once I got injured, rather than going to get sort of pre-injury therapy as well. So, but yeah, and the mindset stuff, I would definitely, that was my biggest stumbling block. I'd go down on the blocks, because I was a sprinter, I'd go down on the blocks and I'd be singing songs in my head, rather than focusing on the race. Whereas that's if I had a good chance of winning, or I had a good chance of running a good time. If it was a windy, gaily, rainy day, I'd be completely focused, because I wasn't expecting too much of myself. So I would take the pressure off myself to do well, and therefore I could completely focus on the race. And I'd run some really fantastic races in really rubbish conditions. But when it came to the crunch, my mind just wasn't in the right space.
So essentially, you've sort of been installing a glass ceiling on what you could possibly achieve. But that manifests itself in a number of ways, doesn't it? Okay, yes. It might all come down to self-belief, but self-belief is different for different people, surely.
Yeah, very different. Yeah, we all carry a sense of self. And as I said right at the beginning, that generally your sense of self, you form most of that in your early years. So up to sort of 7 or 8 years. I mean, I think it was Aristotle that said, give me a child and I'll show you the man at 7, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Said, I think something along those lines. And that basic concept is quite right, because there are years where our brain waves are slower, so we are absorbing a lot of information at a much quicker and much deeper level. Our brain is in survival mode, so it's, everything that you're taking on board is enabling you to survive the world that you've been born into. So everything seems so much more powerful in those early years of your life, and you need to learn how to survive, and you develop that sense of self because of those mechanisms, or how your brain's working at that time. And so the things that you learn in childhood, you do carry because they're really deeply ingrained in your head. And it's about understanding what those might be and then creating different pathways in your brain for you to be able to go to, trigger, fire off when you need to, rather than the old ones that might be holding you back.
Can you help everybody?
If they want to be helped.
What does that mean?
Well, some people don't want to be helped. Some people are quite happy in the space that they're in. Some people will want to change everybody else because it's not their problem. Some people will have too much resistance. So although they may really feel like they need to change, the want to change isn't as powerful as their need to stay the same. So if their resistance is too difficult for them to overcome, the change is too much for them to be comfortable with, then no, I can't help them to shift that unless they're prepared to put in the work over a longer period of time and keep doing it themselves. If they're not in it to do it for themselves, then I can only do so much.
At the same time, if somebody comes and they say, look, John, I really need your help, I'm open to change, etc. I'm sure all treatments and all cases, of course, are different. But, can you say, I'm going to help you here? I can change your self-belief thoughts and your sense of self. I guess results have proved that you can.
Yeah, I can help them to change their. I don't change them for them. I can tell them what they can do in order to help them to change. If I say to you, if you go away and do this, and you don't do it, then it's not, obviously it's never going to take effect. But I can suggest and say, this is what you could do. This is what we know about you. We know why you do this. So if we can get you to stop thinking this way and thinking this way, then obviously we can change your life. But someone might go away and then go, okay, I don't do that, and sit on their hands for a week and then come back and then say, oh, I didn't do it. So therefore I can't, the change just won't take place. It's like learning to drive. If you don't practice, you don't learn to drive.
Has lockdown accentuated problems?
I would imagine in some people it has, but it's also been quite useful for some other people. I know a few people that are reevaluating their lives because they've had the time and the space to be able to do that. I think
that's a lot of people, not just with self-belief problems or self-belief issues. I think the majority of us have just had a little sort of a chance to breathe a little bit and think about a lot of things. Yeah. About life in general, about different situations, about work. And I think in a lot of ways it's been quite positive.
I think for some people it's been very positive. They've kept themselves away from the environments that are causing them the problems, and they've given, like you said, that time to reflect and think about, actually, where am I? And I've recognised that this relationship, I feel much better because I haven't seen this person, or I feel much better because I haven't been in this space, and I haven't followed the normal routine that I would usually follow, and I feel much better for that, and I'm able to take a step back and reflect. For some people, it's just been a nightmare. So they need the routine. They've really struggled. Obviously, people's businesses have gone under and people have lost their jobs. So there's been some people have really struggled with that because it could have been something that they really wanted to continue with. And obviously being on lockdown, not being able to see certain people, that's going to have affected people in different ways. But yeah, there has been positives as well as negatives that have come out of this.
Sure. Is your work conducted better face-to-face, or has Zoom been an acceptable alternative?
I've always worked on Zoom anyway. So I have online clients.
All the time, totally?
No, I have an office where I see people. I have two offices actually where I see people face to face in Hertfordshire. But
Sure.
I've been working online for about 3 years anyway. So because I see clients dotted around the country. So so I've always used it. I think it depends on who you're working with, whether it's necessary to see people face to face or not. It's generally you can pick up on a little bit more when you're face to face with people, because you can feel the energy coming off of somebody. Whereas online, obviously, it's more difficult to do that, but you can still pick up on facial cues and body cues and tone of voice and stuff to see where people are. So yeah, it works very well.
If people are watching this now and they're struggling, and people are watching this now, what would be your message to say? Get in touch, to say, how you could help, almost like, come talk to me.
Yeah, if people feel like if they've noticed perhaps that they feel better because they're not in certain relationships at the moment, or they've been locked up with somebody and it's caused them a lot more problems than they thought, they recognise actually it's caused them a lot of issues, or they have had a complete rethink about their lives, or they need to find a new pathway because the pathway that they were on has been closed off to them. I can help people to look at what they want. And I think that's a question I ask my clients a lot, and they don't really know the answer to that. Because it's one thing they don't think about a lot, and that's generally one of the biggest issues that are people that I see. So I say, well, what do you want? And they go, well, I don't know. A lot of people know what they don't want, but they don't necessarily know what they do want. And I can help people to kind of free themselves up to make choices, moving towards what they really want for themselves, rather than what they think they should do or they have to do.
John, listen, it's lovely talking to you. Thanks for taking the time to speak to Switchbox TV. I'm sure it's going to be fascinating, and I hope a number of people on the back of this do get in contact with you, because I'm sure you'll be able to help. And please subscribe. It's free to subscribe to this channel, so please subscribe to us. John, I look forward to meeting you in person when this dreadful pandemic eventually disappears.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for having me on. I really look forward to catching up with you when we can.
Take care, my friend.
And yourself. Cheers. Be good to yourself. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.